declare open this public hearing of the Standing Committee on Communications, the Arts and Sport for the inquiry into arts and cultural philanthropy. I acknowledge that we're joining from places that have been the meeting place of Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander peoples for thousands of years. I acknowledge the cultures of any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people with us today. Pay respects to their elders. By way of introduction, I'm Susan Templeman, Chair of the committee, and if I could ask other members to introduce themselves, please. Mr. Moncrief, would you like to go first? Am I the only one who can't hear?
No, it's Alison Penfold here, Susan. I'm the member for Lyne. I'll get the ball rolling. Thank you.
Thanks, Alison. David,
Justine Elliott, member for Richmond.
Beautiful, thank you. Do you want to have another go, David? We might leave that for technical people to have a go with, but I want to acknowledge that we have David Moncrief joining us as well, who is the member. Thank you. All right. And I also welcome representatives from the Office for the Arts. Thank you very much for being with us at our first public hearing for this inquiry. For the Hansard record, would you please state your full names and the capacity in which you appear before the committee?
Can you hear me okay? Excellent. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephen Arnott. I am the Deputy Secretary for the Arts in the Department of Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development, Communications, Sport and the Arts. And my colleague is with me today, Julia.
Julia Borkwell, Acting Assistant Secretary of Arts Development and Investment at Office for the Arts. Thank you.
Thank you. As these proceedings are public, they're being broadcast and recorded by Hansard. If you wish to have evidence heard in private, please let the committee know and we'll consider your request. Although the committee does not require you to give evidence under oath, I wish to advise you that this hearing is a formal proceeding of the Parliament. Giving false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as contempt of Parliament. If you object to answering a question, please state the reasons for your objection and the committee will consider the matter. I now invite you to make an opening statement.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have a very short, about 3-minute opening statement, just to sort of do a little bit of scene setting for the committee, if that's okay. All right, well, thank you very much for the opportunity to appear today before the committee in this important inquiry. The Office for the Arts in the department, which I head up, is responsible for delivering the actions under the Australian Government's National Cultural Policy, Revive, a place for every story, a story for every place. We also deliver a broad range of funding programs and provide support to 12 portfolio agencies. We have the privilege to support our Minister, the Minister for the Arts, the Honourable Tony Burke, and of course the Special Envoy for the Arts, the Honourable Susan Templeman. Public and private sector support is fundamental to cultivating a vibrant and sustainable arts sector that benefits all Australians. Private sector support, whether through giving, investing, partnerships or volunteering, plays a crucial role in providing stability and enabling arts organisations and artists to thrive. We welcome this opportunity to discuss the framework supporting philanthropy in the arts, as well as learn from the inquiry about potential opportunities to strengthen this vital area. Just quickly on Revive. Revive, which was released in early 2023, is a comprehensive 5-year plan to renew and revitalise Australia's arts and cultural landscape, including through the encouragement of philanthropic giving. This national cultural policy has provided an opportunity to foster increased partnerships between commercial and not-for-profit sector organisations and to drive co-investment for the creation of original Australian stories. I am pleased to say that the government has fully implemented the key actions in Revive that were intended to support philanthropy in the arts. The first one being the merging of Creative Partnerships Australia into Creative Australia, which I'll talk about shortly, and also the reform of the deductible gift recipient scheme. Creative Partnerships Australia, which was created as a Commonwealth company, was the primary vehicle for fostering private investment in the arts between 2013 and 2023. A key action Revive was to merge Creative Partnerships Australia into the newly formed Creative Australia on 1 July 2023. This brought together public, philanthropic, and commercial interests in a single organisation with the intention of creating new synergies, driving co-investment, and expanding opportunities for partnerships and mentoring across the sector. Creative Australia's capacity building programs, mentoring, and match funding initiatives such as Amplify and Plus One are designed to help artists and organisations attract private sector support. Through the Australian Cultural Fund, Creative Australia has facilitated significant philanthropic contributions with a year-on-year increase to over $15 million in donations in 24-25 from 20,000 donors and over 1,000 fundraising projects completed. The current framework to encourage private giving to the arts in Australia incorporates taxation incentives and a number of support programs. These include tax deductibility through deductible gift recipient status, private and public ancillary funds, the Cultural Gifts Program, which we administer here in the Office for the Arts, and the Australian Cultural Fund. The ability to receive tax-deductible donations through DGR status, formally granted through the Register of Cultural Organisations, provides important tax incentives for individuals and organisations to contribute to the arts. Recent legislative reform, including the transfer of the administration of the DGR category for cultural organisations from the Office for the Arts to the Australian Taxation Office on 1 January 2024, were designed to streamline processes, reduce regulatory burden, and improve approval times, making it easier for cultural organisations to attract philanthropic support. Between 2019 and 2023, over $1 billion was donated to cultural organisations with deductible gift recipient status through the former Register of Cultural Organisations, with over $200 million donated in 2023 alone. The Cultural Gifts Program, which I mentioned earlier, enables donations of works of art and cultural objects to cultural and collecting institutions and provides significant support with donations with a total value of $514.8 million over the past 5 financial years, enhancing public collections and increasing public access to culturally significant items. 22% of these gifts were made to institutions in regional remote Australia. And obviously the donors, the generous donors of those significant items are able to claim a tax deduction for that donation. Just in conclusion, as a 5-year policy, Revive is due to be renewed in 2027, and public consultations on the next National Cultural Policy, a government commitment at the 2025 election, are expected to commence in the first half of this year. We look forward both to the outcomes of this inquiry and consultation on the cultural policy so that we can consider ways to further strengthen the philanthropic framework, contributing to a vibrant and sustainable future for Australia's arts and culture. And I'm very happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Arnott. I want to acknowledge that Deputy Chair, Ms. Aldred, has joined us as well. If you just want to introduce yourself so that we can check your microphone's working as well, Mary, that'd be great.
Oh, thank you, Chair. It is, and it's nice to see you. I think I had some technical issues earlier at the start of the meeting.
Not a problem. And Ms. Aldred's a member for Monash. Can I just pick up on some of the things? Thank you for that overview, because we are at very, very early stages of this inquiry and really trying to get our heads around the existing strengths and challenges in the system. Can I ask you how you would define arts and cultural philanthropy, and if that is something the Office of the Arts has put words around specifically?
We could probably provide you with a well thought through definition, Chair, but the way I think we think about it is any private giving to organisations that are in the arts and cultural sector, or indeed to individuals through the Australian Cultural Fund. There is, I believe, quite a detailed definition. My colleagues will say that through the old Register of Cultural Organisations guidelines, so we can provide that to the committee to aid you in your thinking.
Thank you. Can I ask a bit more about the Cultural Gifts program? You gave us the value of the program of about 514.8 million over 5 years. When you look at that program, do you have any views on what would help improve the volume of donations through that program? And what I'd be keen to understand is how that program benefits artists.
Yeah, sure. So, look, I think that my take on it is the program is very well known through the institutions that take advantage of it. And, you know, at all the kind of major galleries, museums, and many regional institutions know the program well and, let's say, solicit donations of artworks from their community and from the public, encouraging people to give. You know, I suppose, you know, the better known that program is, particularly through, you know, visual arts collectors and so on, you know, the more likely we would be to get further donations. But I think there's been solid growth in the level of donations across that program, certainly in my time here. It benefits artists in the sense that their work, it's a way to get their work in public-facing institutions. So art that might not normally be seen, art that's been held in private collections for many years, when that's donated, it must be donated to an institution that makes the collection available to the public. So that obviously means that their work then is, you know, publicly seen, and it benefits them in that way.
I'm going to ask one more question, then I'm going to hand to the Deputy Chair. I want to go a bit broader in terms of the philanthropy. And we're looking at philanthropy across the whole spectrum for major institutions, for regional organisations, you know, so it's a really wide spectrum. And I'm just wondering what the difference is in the roles between public funding and philanthropy, say for those major institutions, which would be quite different for smaller ones. So can you paint a bit of a picture of the differences across the different parts of the sector that exist and the role that philanthropy plays versus public funding?
Yeah, yes, I can do that. So certainly from the Australian government's perspective, and I just sort of might break it down into a few different areas. So, for example, obviously the government supports the national cultural institutions through the budget with a amount of funding every year, which is set out in the Parliament's budget papers. And you know that quantity of money is sufficient for them to run their operations, employ the staff they need, make their collections or their activities available to the public. Obviously, they are encouraged to raise additional funding from the private sector, and they all invariably do to varying degrees. And that funding obviously is, you know, enables them to do different things, purchase additional artworks, put on more expensive exhibitions. So they tend to use the philanthropic donations or the corporate support to enhance their activities. I think I'd say a similar thing but I would say that for those national institutions that I mentioned, the level of philanthropy compared to how much the public funding that goes in is obviously the public funding is by far the majority of their financial resources. There's a group of companies which we call the National Partnership Companies, previously known as the Major Performing Arts Companies, that are funded through Creative Australia. They also all get a kind of fixed level of funding from the government every year, but they raise very significant additional revenue, both through philanthropic support and through their box office ticket sales. So they would have a much higher proportion of, let's say, non-government revenue than some of the public institutions that I mentioned. And then, there's obviously a range of smaller companies that also, take advantage of the deductible gift recipient status that they can receive to raise private funds that are tax deductible from the public. And the principal mechanism that is being used to facilitate individual artists to raise private funding for their projects is the Australian Cultural Fund, which I mentioned before, which artists can use to promote their projects and seek donations from private individuals, which become tax deductible through that particular fund. So that's a sort of a bit of an overview of the various elements of the Australian government kind of involvement in the system. Probably not exhaustive, I would hasten to add.
Great. Thank you very much. Deputy Chair, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite interested in the Regional Arts Fund, and was wondering if you could just talk to us a little bit about how you promote awareness of it and engagement through different regional communities, and perhaps opportunities for that awareness to be improved and enhanced.
Yeah, sure. So the Regional Arts Fund is a long-standing fund, probably goes back to the 90s or even the 80s, was certainly being looked after in the department when I first started back in the early 2000s. The fund is administered by an organisation called Regional Arts Australia, and they have the responsibility of basically dispersing that funding and working with the regional, state government and territory government arts organisations, both to raise funding, disperse funding, and make sure the fund is well known to artists and arts companies in regional areas. The committee might wish to talk to Regional Arts Australia in more detail about how they go about promoting the fund, but needless to say, like all arts programs, demand outstrips supply. So it's not really a problem of promoting the fund, it's more really a way of kind of administering the funding so that everybody gets an opportunity to participate over time. But yes, Regional Arts Australia would be able to tell you in more detail about how they administer that fund.
And through you, Chair, obviously different state and territory governments would have different Office of the Arts and programs and policies to promote and engage the community. How do you interact at a state and territory level so that you're not perhaps duplicating different efforts and enhancing and maximising investment and initiatives?
Great question, thank you. So there's a number of mechanisms. We engage very regularly with our state and territory counterparts across all areas of arts funding and policy. The sort of principal vehicle for that is the Cultural Ministers meeting, which our ministers re-established back in 2022. It had sort of gone into abeyance for a period of time. And that meets twice a year, and the state and territory arts and culture ministers get together and talk through and set priorities, very much guided by the Australian government's revised cultural policy. And that group of ministers tasks officials with various types of functions and pieces of work. There's what we call the all jurisdictions meeting, where all the heads of the state and territory and Commonwealth art agencies get together to talk about priorities, what the ministers have set or asked us to do, and how we'll work together to achieve those kind of national outcomes. And then there are quite a number of organisations that are what we call multi-partite funded, where they get their funding from the Commonwealth, from the states and territories as well. And the Creative Australia is mainly responsible for administering those funding agreements and making sure that there's no duplication and that shared sort of outcomes and priorities are delivered through those funding mechanisms. So that's a sort of snapshot of that.
And just one more question through you, Chair. Oh, I'm sorry, did I cut you off? No. Just in terms of international jurisdictions and programs and initiatives, could you talk about any opportunities or key issues that you've been able to identify internationally, particularly across the Asia Pacific region?
Sure, I can sort of give a high-level overview. So there's some limited funding available to support arts companies to reach international audiences. We run a small fund called the International Cultural Diplomacy Arts Fund, to which organisations can apply. It's very modest funding. My colleague Julia can talk to you a little bit more about that if you're interested. Creative Australia also has some international projects. For example, they might support writers to go to some of the major European literary festivals and fairs, and they can give you more detail about that. A couple of mechanisms that we do have. So in recent times, we've been involved in G20 cultural ministers meetings, where we work with, let's say, like-minded countries on arts and cultural priorities, learn more about what they're doing, and share our national cultural policy priorities with them. And we also work in environments like the UNESCO, United Nations Education, Science, Culture Organization, where we're a signatory to a number of arts and cultural conventions. So that's a sort of a quick summary. If you want to know any more about that, we can certainly provide things on notice or follow up with further detail.
That'll do. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Elliott, I think you indicated.
Thanks. Yeah, look, thank you so much, Chair.
And then can I just say, and after you, I'll come to Mr. Moncrief.
Great. Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you for the presentation today. It's incredibly insightful. Some of the questions I was going to ask, the wonderful Deputy Chairs asked, we're both from the regions and many people here are from the regions, and I really appreciate the insight you've given to us because it's such a big issue for us in the regions in terms of ensuring our arts and culture expand, philanthropy as well, and it's one of the many challenges we have because it is such an incredible game changer to have them in our region. I've got many in my electorate and many others have as well, and anything we can do to further that, it'd be fantastic. But I'm interested too in terms of the role of small community groups, which we all have as well, who are very vocal and wonderful and diverse right throughout the country. And I'm interested where the office has any insight into their use of the existing mechanisms that are there, because there's often challenges for those small community groups and we all want to do all that we can to encourage them. Again, that's of a great benefit to the regions as well.
Yeah, look, I absolutely recognise that, and I don't have a huge amount of insight into, for example, how much community groups are utilising the Australian Cultural Fund, for example, to help fund their projects. One thing I would mention though is we do have a long-standing program, fantastic program in the Office for the Arts called Cultural Heritage Grants, which is actually run by the National Library. And that is small grants for small regional, galleries, historical trusts, community groups where they can apply for more grants to support their activities, whether that might be kind of skill raising and learning how to manage collections, whether that's about, digitizing bits of collections and things like that. And there's always a very good event where the National Library brings a lot of those community groups and heritage trusts together into Canberra to have a sort of a get together and a ceremony as those grants are awarded. So that's just one example of something we do. There would be a lot more going on, and I'm sure we could look into getting some more information. Certainly, Regional Arts Australia will have some insight into that particular area, as I think will Creative Australia with regard to the Australia Cultural Fund.
Thank you, Ms. Elliott. Anything else you wanted to add? Okay, Mr. Moncrief, I'm just checking whether you have questions you'd like to ask. And
thank you, Chair. It's my
yay, and we've
my
got
comment.
sound.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. And thank you, Chair, and thank you, Stephen, for coming in today. Really appreciate it. I just wanted to check, sort of following on from a little bit of what Mary said about the international side of things. Do you have a benchmark of where of what sort of the standard is internationally on the role of philanthropy? Do you have measures that you are looking at of how you're measuring how successful the role of philanthropy in the arts is?
That's a very, very good question. And the answer is we don't really. And the reason for that is that international kind of comparisons are quite difficult to make because there's such different systems. So, for example, obviously the United States, the arts depends almost entirely on philanthropic and private giving, and there's only quite a small amount of public funding. Whereas, say, for Germany, for example, we know that their government resources the arts and culture at a very high level. So it's quite hard to make international comparisons. We've actually been sort of hunting around to see if we can find something for the committee, whether the OECD or UNESCO or any of those kinds of multilateral organizations, economic type-based organizations, have done any work. So we will keep looking for that, and we'll let you know if we find anything that might be useful. But no, not at this point of time. We don't have any direct comparisons to share.
Is there any sort of is that in terms of the data, or in terms of the frameworks that you've got around it, or both, or?
It's really in terms of the actual data. How much funding is going to how many organisations and things like that. It's hard to benchmark Australia against any particular market, I think. In terms of the actual systems that are used and the various tax incentives and so on that are available, we would have that information or be able to get that information, I would think, just so the committee is able to see what some of the different incentives that maybe are used internationally that might be different to ours. So we could take that on notice for you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be fabulous to take on notice. Thank you. We talked, most of the conversation we've had has been about the things that we are doing and are currently in place. So I really want to think about the challenges and whether there are emerging structures or mechanisms. So let's start with that. Are you aware, and particularly in the, any chance you've had to focus on this, are there any emerging structures or giving mechanisms that have come across your desk that are not things that we are currently using, or variations of things we're using?
Not that springs immediately to mind. I do recall that there have been some calls from the sector to raise the percentage of tax deduction through the tax deductible gift recipient scheme. So currently donors can get 100% tax deduction. So if they donate $100, they can get $100 tax deduction. There have been calls to increase that to 150%. I've heard that. In terms of the use of public and private ancillary funds that I mentioned in my opening statement, there have been some calls to vary the kind of requirements under those funds to increase the amount that they are required to dispersed from those funds. That's one other thing that I think we've revealed. There would be, I'm sure from the revived public consultation process, there would be more of those examples that we could provide to the committee. And also, I'm sure that will come up in the context of the upcoming consultation and also your hearings and the people that appear before the committee. So we'll keep an eye out, and we'll make sure that you have the full gamut of things that we're aware of.
Thank you for that. And I think this is an inquiry that is genuinely looking at what all the options are, without anticipating what it's going to be. And I have had the same issues raised with me, particularly about the 5%, I think it's a 5% minimum that's required to be dispersed from ancillary funds, and the sense that that's become a cap rather than a floor.
Yes.
So I'm sure we'll be able to explore that. So the other question I have about this is, what are the best measures of whether government policies or programs aimed at encouraging philanthropy are effective? How do you measure the effectiveness of the existing mechanisms, and what other ways of measuring them might there be?
Yeah, so I think I'll probably measure the way we measure them or kind of track their performance is fairly crude. and as I said to you, we really look at trying to make sure that the amount that is being donated, the dollars that are going through, whether it's cultural gifts programs, the value of donations, or the amount of money that's going through DGR, or the amount of money that's being donated through the Cultural Fund is growing, and the reach of those programs is growing. So yeah, it's fairly rudimentary. I think there's an opportunity to do some more analysis of basically the publicly reported data that arts and cultural organisations report, where they report how much funding they've raised, through what different categories and what mechanisms they're using. That we sort of haven't had the resources to do that, but it's something I think that would be useful to improve the quality of data around this area.
Great. I'm also aware that Mary Doyle, the member for Aston, is on the line. She's not appearing on my screen, but I'm just checking, Ms. Doyle, that we have you. I can see there's a mute.
Yeah, yes, I am. Can anyone else see me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Now, would you? I'll throw to you for questions, Ms. Doyle.
Oh no, that's okay. I was just wondering if anyone else could see me. I'm the member for Aston, but no, look, David already took my question, so that's fine. That's okay. And a couple of other questions were already been answered as well, so that's fine. I didn't have any questions, so that's what I just wondered whether anyone could see me, because I was wondering. No, Susan couldn't see me, so no worries.
And I can see
I'm not a ghost.
It's all these new
Susan,
screens.
I've had my hand up as well for a while, so
Yeah, good. Alison,
wonderful. And I couldn't see you either, Ms. Penfold. So I have now rearranged my screen. My apologies. And Ms. Penfold, over to you.
Great, thank you. Just a few questions. Can I just understand the key role of the Office of the Arts in terms of this cultural and arts philanthropy? Are you more involved in terms of funding? Because it seems that you have less resources to do analysis and research. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. So our major role is obviously supporting the minister in both developing policy and delivering policy, including the actions of the revived policy that I mentioned before. We are really we run a number of programs, supporting everything from Indigenous visual arts to Festivals Australia, to touring of arts exhibitions through the Visions of Australia program and the National Collecting Institutions touring program. So we do a lot of that. We don't have a major research function. couple of things we do working with the Australian Bureau of Statistics is we produce a report, which is cultural funding in governments, which comes out every couple of years, which tracks spending by governments in the Commonwealth, states and territories every 2 years. Just to note that the couple of things worth mentioning is Creative Australia does have a research function and does regularly put out various reports and data. And in Revive, they are one of the actions of Revive is they are to produce a state of culture report. So it might be worth the committee asking them for some details around the content and timing of that report, which I understand should be available later this year.
So in terms of then the capacity domestically to sort of on a regular basis sort of dive into who's giving, etc. Is Philanthropy Australia still a peak council that's operating this space? Do they do any of that type of work?
That's a good question, which I'm not sure of.
I'm sure they do, but we can certainly get back on.
Yeah.
Maybe we should talk to them. I don't know. I used to know somebody who was involved with Philanthropy Australia. That's why I'm aware of it. So there's no sense of the types of people who are, the types of organisations or individuals that are giving. Are these? So what I mean by that, are we dealing with people that have a sort of generational connection to the arts and culture? Are we finding, younger people perhaps, two incomes, no kids type that have got that sort of discretionary income that are looking to invest? Do we have a sense of what's happening there?
Not really, to be honest. We don't do a lot of analysis. Most of the giving that happens through the tax system is obviously private, so no one can reveal that. But there's no doubt that some trends could be identified, but we haven't done that work. But it's possible that Philanthropy Australia could have. It's possible that Creative Australia may be able to do some of that work. So I think it's a great question, but no, I don't have anything that I can.
That's all right. No, that's what we're exploring here, isn't it? To find, Can I kind of pivot then, as one of a number of regional MPs here today? I've engaged with a number of, particularly in the sort of art side of things, more than the sort of cultural, sort of drama, musical type groups. That very few of them have had any engagement with any of Australia's sort of art galleries, cultural institutions. So they're not really aware of opportunity. And when I've engaged, say, with the Parliament House collections, their advice to me is, will you tell us who we should look for and engage with about potentially purchasing and supporting regional artists? I guess my question is, it doesn't seem quite like there's dedicated activity or action to try and really engage with regional artists to get them showcased. It's a pretty big deal to be in a state art gallery or the National Gallery. Have you got any thoughts on that, whether it is a place where there needs to be more conscious action by cultural institutions to support regional artists?
Yeah, there's a couple of things I would say to that. I mean, as I mentioned before, Regional Arts Australia, that's sort of one of its roles, is to work with the smaller regional arts organisations. They have, they have staff that are specifically employed in regional areas to help with this work. So definitely, if it feels like we're not reaching people and people aren't aware of what the opportunities are, we should know that and work on how we can rectify that. The other thing I would just mention is, as part of Revive, there's a relatively new program called Sharing the National Collection, which basically brings major works, artworks from the National Collection into regional areas, into regional galleries around the country. I think we've had works now on loan to galleries in every state and territory. They're 2-year loans, and obviously part of the purpose of it is to raise the profile of the National Collection, make sure local communities and artists are more aware of the work of the National Gallery, and then maybe that could be a mechanism for them to engage more with some of the Commonwealth institutions like the National Gallery or Regional Arts Australia. So it's just something that's sort of out there.
But it seems to me that the heavy lifting still has to be done by the regional artists who, for many of them, are struggling. Where there sort of seems to be a more of a lack of interest, investment, and by the more resourced national galleries or state galleries. I guess that's my point here, to try and explore that. I've got galleries, run by volunteers that are, really doing it very tough, and to turn around and say, well, you guys have to really do the heavy lifting to leverage those programs, fantastic, but they don't have the resources. And I fear that our major cultural institutions, our art galleries, are kind of a bit blindsided by what's happening in the region. Certainly in my area, and I've got come to my Parliament House office. My walls are dripping with regional artists from my electorate. So,
and Ms. Penfold, I might take that as a comment that's noted, because it's moving a little bit away from our terms of reference around philanthropy. But your point is shared by many on the committee about how do we leverage philanthropy to get more support into those regional galleries and those community art spaces, which is one of the things we'd like to be, that we're exploring in this. So
I've got one more, and it's not that line. I'm just wondering whether the Offices of Art, the Patreon, I don't know if you're aware of Patreon, which is, just in terms of new ways of attracting people to invest. Patreon certainly is something that is supporting a lot of online, communities. I'm just wondering whether you've looked at it to see whether it's that sort of model is supporting our arts and cultural, our artists, etc. Have you had a look at that, or is that something you could look at?
I'm very well aware of Patreon, but no, I mean, I think our sort of mechanism for doing a similar thing to what Patreon does, although it doesn't go quite as far, is the Australia Cultural Fund, and it differs from the commercial products like Kickstarter or like Patreon or whatever, in that the people who give to that through that particular program to an artist or an arts organisation are able to claim that donation as a tax deduction on their tax return. So I think what the point of that might be is that we need to try and make sure that more artists, more regional arts organisations are well aware of how useful the Cultural Fund can be to attract funding for their projects and for their organisations. You can certainly ask Creative Australia more detail about this, because they run that particular fund. But one of the advantages of Patreon is that it's a regular giving thing. So, you give an amount every month or whatever it might be. I don't believe the Cultural Fund has that ability in it, but we should check that with Creative Australia.
And it's not set up as an online community either, is it, the Australian Cultural Fund?
It is. Yeah.
It is?
So,
okay.
Thank you. No, that's a really good, really good to raise that, and that's something we can seek more information about. But I will share the link with everybody on that. It's a great giving mechanism. So thank you for that. Very useful to have those questions. Can I just check with people? I'm trying to keep an eye on hands up to see if I'm missing anyone who has more questions. I've just got one I wanted to. Has someone got one? I'm just double checking I'm not missing anyone.
I can't see any hands up. Yeah.
Great, thank you. One of the questions I think we've talked a lot about regional areas and how for them attracting philanthropy is a really hard task to do it on any scale compared to some of the obviously city-based and more major institutions. But is there any insight into what parts of the cultural sector or which activities are the most challenging to attract philanthropy to?
That's a good question, and no, I don't think we would have that kind of insight. Yeah, that's a very good question, and I don't think I've got anything to add on that. So that's something that's important, I think, for us to think about more carefully. One thing I would say is I know you're sort of looking at philanthropy, but presumably also corporate giving, is an important area. And I know that has been far less successful and much more difficult to raise money through corporate sponsorships and so on than it has been in the past. And it's become a lower priority for many corporate businesses to give to the arts for some reason or other. So that will be interesting as well to interrogate what's happening there and what we could do to increase that.
Yeah, indeed. All right, I think unless there's anything that the Office of the Arts would like to add, I think that has covered a really wide range of questions that we've had to paint a picture, to identify what we know, what we don't know, where some knowledge gaps are. And hopefully over the course of this inquiry, we'll be able to fill some of those gaps and find some of the answers. But thank you. Is there anything else either of you would like to add?
Just to thank the committee again for the opportunity to appear. Just to check, we took a couple of things on notice a bit, so it'd be good to get an idea from the Secretariat about what good timing for us to get back to you on that was, and just to wish you all the best of luck with this important inquiry.
Well, thank you. And if we have more things that come up, we'll certainly continue communicating with you. I will let you know about those questions on notice. So thank you for attending today's hearing. If you have been asked to provide any additional information, which you have, or if there is anything else you would like to provide, please send this information to the Secretariat by the 19th of March 2026. You'll be sent a copy of the transcript of your evidence to which you may suggest corrections. Just in closing comments for this hearing, particularly for anyone observing or listening to it, the written submissions for the inquiry are due by the 2nd of March 2026 next week. If you've been listening and you would like to make a submission, please let the Secretariat know, particularly if that deadline is difficult to meet. The committee welcomes contributions from a range of perspectives, and you can see the breadth of things we're trying to get our heads around. The inquiry terms of reference and information about making a submission is available on the committee's website. Submissions must address some or all of the terms of reference. The committee is likely to schedule further public hearings. Dates and times are currently unknown. Please monitor the committee's website for information. I now declare the hearing closed and the committee is now adjourned.